I wanted to bring today's episode talking about astrology and how it relates to the fertility journey. So a lot of times when we're on the journey, we may feel like we're stuck, or we could feel really heartbroken. We may feel overwhelmed. And so using astrology to help us navigate the journey it's all about better understanding ourselves. So deepening our self-awareness, deepening our intuition to understand how we can then navigate this journey in a way that's right for us. So excited for you to listen to the episode, and thank you so much. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. Hey there. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call is for action takers. And really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, FabFertile.com, and click on book a free call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's FabFertile, FabFertile.com, and click on book a free call. One theme that keeps coming up with the couples in our FabFertile couples coaching program is sleep. Whether it's insomnia, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up at night, or feeling tired when we wake up, sleep is critical for fertility and hormones. And that's why I'm so excited to have Blue Blocks as our podcast sponsor. So we're exposed to blue and green light from our phones, our tablets, our computers, indoor lights, and more. And this exposure impacts our melatonin production. And melatonin is essential for both female and male fertility. It helps determine the frequency and duration of our cycle and impacts sperm. There's lots of blue light blocking glasses on the market, but the ones from Blue Blocks, they've actually compared other popular brands, and Blue Blocks block 100% of blue and green light, while other brands fall short. So I have their sleep glasses. They have red lenses, and the ones I have are a little translucent frame, and they're so stylish and really cool. And so they eliminate 100% of the blue and green light in the 400 nanometer to 550 nanometer range. So this is the exact range that has been shown in clinical studies to disrupt melatonin and negatively impact your sleep. So all you do is wear your sleep glasses after sunset until it's time for bed, and you'll notice improved sleep after just one use. And it's also cool to use when you're flying for managing jet lag. So I got to say I was a little skeptical about the noticing improvement after one use, but literally I use these glasses and my sleep is actually already pretty good. I used them for one day, and I have to say after one day, I had the best sleep of my life. I just felt so rested. So these glasses, they ship free and they're tracked for all orders anywhere in the world. And also they have all their frames come in prescription, non-prescription, and reading glasses. Plus you can send in your frames and they'll add the blue light blocking and green light blocking lenses to your frame. So this is an easy hack that you can add to your fertility toolkit. All you do is go to BlueBlocks, BlueBlocks.com. Use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout and receive a 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BlueBlocks.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast to receive your 15% discount. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle Or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Clark, the founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today I'm welcoming Dr. Jennifer Freed to the podcast, and we're digging into astrology, psychology, and what this means for the fertility journey. Jennifer Freed, PhD, is a nationally recognized expert, author, speaker, and consultant with over 25 years of experience in fields of psychological astrology and social emotional learning. She is the author of the best-selling psychological astrology guide called Use Your Planets Wisely, which I highly recommend that you read, released January 2020 with Sounds True Macmillan Books. And her work has been featured in USA Today, People Magazine, New York Times, Huffington Post, and Forbes, and on Good Morning America and Fox News. She's a regular contributor to Goop, writes about astrology, relationships, and personal growth, and the go-to astrologer for Goop's health summits. She's also the co-founder of the highly successful non-profit teen program called AHA, which serves more than 5,000 families annually in the state of California by creating positive attitudes and social harmony and bridging the achievement gap. Definitely check out her website at jenniferfreed, FREED.com. And thanks so much for listening. And I'm really thankful that you are here. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Dr. Freed, excited to have you on the podcast.
I am so happy to be here. And I love that in this day and age, you can be in Canada, I can be in Santa Barbara, and we can have a meaningful conversation.
Absolutely. So can you share with our listeners of really how you came to do this work?
Well, I was always interested in people. That was my profound obsession from a young child. I was interested in astrology, but I had no one to talk to about it. And then when I was 19, at the time I was already studying psychology, I had a profound astrological reading which absolutely whetted my appetite for more education. And basically, I've been studying both psychology and astrology since I was 19, and I'm 62. And I've been teaching astrology and psychology for over 30 years, independently and together.
I love it. I love it. So I have read your latest book, which is called Use Your Planets Wisely. So I developed these questions based on the reading of the book. So for me, it's really weird, but only in the last couple of years, or maybe not weird, I discovered this rising sign. I'm a Leo, thought that was my horoscope, and astrology, that's all I knew. And then kind of went down a small rabbit hole and I'm nowhere near, I'm just kind of at the surface. I do find that your book was very eye-opening and a really very clear, concise, easy way to understand, because I think some of this stuff with astrology can be super complex. Yeah, then I discovered my rising sign and a few other things. So I guess before we get going on this, if someone's interested in looking at their natal chart or their birth chart, you're recommending to go to astro.com or Time Passages?
Yes, and my current favorite is Cafe Astrology.
Okay.
And all your listeners need to do is put in free natal chart in Google. There's many vendors right now. I prefer right now Cafe Astrology to use with my book, Use Your Planets Wisely, because once you put in your birth date, your birthplace, and your birth time, if you know it, if you don't know it, put 12 p.m. and you'll still get a decent list. Then it will give you a list of your planets in the signs that they are in. And then that's a great way to begin to use the book, Use Your Planets Wisely, to dig very deep into your psyche and those that you love.
Awesome. So definitely if you want to follow along, you can pause this now and go and get your birth chart there at Cafe Astrology, and then maybe following along, you might have some more insights as we do this. So with this, obviously people listening to my podcast, they're going through the fertility journey, and it can be, it's very difficult and heartbreaking. And there can be a struggle, but each struggle has a beginning, middle, and end. How do we use self-awareness when we're dealing with a difficult time? And how would astrology help to give us better insight?
That's a great question. Well, that's where you would need to talk to a very experienced astrologer, because what we can help with, and I'm not the only one, is timing. In a good chart reading, you get a sense of divine timing. And some periods are much easier than others. Some are much more opportune to get pregnant than others. And it helps to get a roadmap of timing, not fate. It's not going to say you will or you won't, but it will give you a very strong understanding of the energies at work.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you give us an example of that, for instance, what we would look for?
I was to look at somebody's chart that was trying to get pregnant, and they were in a period which is called a transit. It's just a cycle called Saturn transiting the moon. This would be one of the most difficult times ever to conceive, because Saturn transiting the moon translates as restrictions on nurturing and mothering. So you can see that wouldn't be your best time to try and get pregnant. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, that lasts for about a year, that kind of cycle. And then you might have something called Jupiter with the moon, which confers abundance and blessings to mothering. It's very specific. So the timing cycles have a lot to say about opportunity and also adversity. You would need a professional reading in order to really look at what cycle you're in and how to best work it.
Mm-hmm. More with self-awareness, and if we have our birth chart in front of us, how would looking at our birth chart, it's quite a complex thing, but how for self-awareness during difficult times, can our birth chart help? Well,
that's a good point. If you get your chart and then you need a good accompanying text, which would be my book, I think, or other books, Use Your Planets Wisely, you can look at how you emotionally work through things, how you use your will to get things you want in life, how you identify yourself. And in my book, there's 3 levels. You're either operating at a primitive level, which is reactive and fear-based, or an adaptive level where you're functioning pretty well, but you're still kind of bound by ego outcomes, or the evolving when you trust the divine of your knowing and you're here to serve. And when we're in the evolving state, which hardly any of us are in for very long, moments at a time, we actually feel completely purposeful and supported by the divine of our own knowing. And it feels so delicious and good that it doesn't really feel like you have to do anything other than make your efforts toward the direction that you'd like.
Yeah, that flow state where you kind of maybe bounce in and out of it, but hanging out there all the time might be you're like just floating through life.
Well, and also most of us are not at that spiritual place where we really have absolute faith and are willing to do the work each and every day on behalf of being a clear vessel.
Mm-hmm. And I think with this journey, a lot of people can be stuck up in that primitive state with that reactive, the fear. There's so many triggers on this journey, seeing pregnant bellies and, friends getting pregnant. So a lot of triggers. So being caught up in that primitive state. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have so much compassion, unbelievable compassion for this fertility journey. And I've worked with so many clients on this. Because it's not just your fear that you are trying to manage, but unfortunately, our whole society is so fear-based about having children, not having children, what it means to your identity if you do or you don't. So I think the most important thing when you're in such a tender time is to keep reminding yourself that you're whole and complete. Nothing is missing. Mm. Nothing is missing. You have a desire for a child, and that's one of the most beautiful things in the world. But even right now, without having a child, you're whole and complete. I think one of the most painful and disturbing things about the fertility journey is that people buy into and believe something's wrong with them if they do not right this second have a child. And nothing could be farther from the truth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when we go, if we're thinking about the moon and the tides, how you had some cool analogy in there in your book about how what that shows us about our emotions and our feelings. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. The moon sign. So you should all look this up on Cafe Astrology if you haven't yet, about your own moon sign. And I'd really like to know yours, Sarah. Can you tell me that first? Because I could use you as an example.
Yeah, here we are. Moon, Aquarius.
Okay. No wonder you're doing this podcast.
Okay.
So the moon sign is representational of your innermost needs, what we call your non-negotiable needs for emotional fulfillment. It's your inner self. The sun sign, your birth date, when you say, oh, I'm a Leo, that's about your identity and the outerwear. But the inner reality is defined by the moon sign. So for you, a moon in Aquarius, your innermost need is to have a sense of being in community, in kinship, in friendship, and having some kind of role to play in the collective. That's your innermost need, to be intimate. You want to feel like you have equality, and you also want to feel like it is an egalitarian situation. So no matter what, friendship is at the core of your innermost needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I am doing this. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you know what your moon sign is, you can get more direct about meeting your emotional needs. There's not a lot of noise because you kind of know. For example, my moon sign is Taurus, and my innermost need is touch, holding, good food, repetition, security, and beauty. And I was just thinking this morning, so this is one of these silly examples. Every single morning, I get up and I do my spiritual practice, and I go to make my espresso. And just this morning, I was thinking how much I love being home, and I love every morning picking up that espresso cup and making the espresso. Like, it just thrills me. Because of the repetition, not just that thing. So if you know your moon sign, you can start being much more effective at addressing emotional fulfillment. And one thing I've learned at 62 that I'd love your listeners to know is that getting what you want doesn't make you happy. It's just another thing that you get to have, including a baby. Yes, it can make you so thrilled and ecstatic. And then there's dealing with a child. And then there's all of that. So the ego always is possessed by outcomes. When I get this, I'll be happy. But the soul understands that happiness resides in the gratitude of the moment, no matter how it occurs, even in the toughest times.
Yeah, that constant searching, grass is always greener, and keep going. And then you get there and you're like, yeah, you're not fulfilled. And you're like, what the heck is this?
Well, every one of us has desires, and they're beautiful. I have desires, but I'm old enough and wise enough now to know, oh, when I get into the New York Times, which I will be hopefully in the next 2 weeks,
Yay.
That's just another mountaintop. And then there's the release from that. And, this is just what the ego constantly craves, is some kind of confirmation of self or success, but it doesn't last. And once you really know that, at least in my case, you get much more in touch with the moments at hand and the preciousness of them.
Yeah, really being present.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about the full moon, new moon, all the different phases of the moon? How does that come into play?
That's a great question. Well, the new moon is the beginning each month of a new cycle. It's the best time to be quiet and make an intention. 2 weeks later, we have a full moon, and that full moon is whatever you've begun 2 weeks earlier can come to fruition. It's like the fullness of the moon. And then we go to the waning moon, and that's about integrating and digesting until the next new moon. So it's a wonderful reflection of a psychological process.
And then the menstrual cycle too can follow on with that as well.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
What is your rising sign? Let's talk about that.
Yes, the rising is Aquarius.
Oh, so you have moon and rising in Aquarius.
Yeah, did I get that right? Like, where is it? So
well, that's possible. I'm just trying to find out.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, did I read this wrong all along? Okay, wait a minute. It says ascendant is Gemini.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Oh, I always thought, what? Oh my goodness. Okay.
No, but that's why, let me just tell your listeners, the pop astrology, when you just go, oh, I'm a Leo, I'm an Aquarius, that takes almost no scholarship. But what we're now talking about, going through the planets in the signs and the ascendant, is years of study.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like getting a master's degree in French or Spanish, or getting a mathematics degree, because to really do astrology properly takes an extraordinary deep dive into archetypes, mythology, psychology, and math. So the fact that you didn't know that right is, in the second, oh, my ascendant is this, is like, okay, got to look at that list. That's fine. So an ascendant is your persona, how you are socially, what your role is to play in the family and with society. And for you, a Gemini rising is the communicator, is the networker, is the conversationalist. So you see, you couldn't be more destined to do something like this podcast. It's beautiful.
It's nice. Okay, so let's kind of go a little bit into a little bit of a segue here. Self-sabotage. So this comes up a lot, especially when we're working with people looking at a functional approach, making diet and lifestyle changes. They're using functional lab testing to really customize this. So there's a lot of change to be made. So sometimes during this, we may feel we can't do it. There's some self-sabotage can come up. How would that, as far as our chart?
Yeah, we can look at that, but give me like 2 examples. I like to hear actual examples of what you mean by that.
Yeah, so basically, a lot of it is like, we intend to eat a healthy diet. For instance, a lot of times people we're working with, they need to go gluten-free, like myself. So going gluten-free, and then you may cheat, or it doesn't work, or we can't do it. It's too hard. So that diet piece, or maybe we know we need to go to sleep properly. We know sleep is the cornerstone of good health. Why are we up watching Netflix till 2 a.m? So like those kind of things, we know what we need to do, but we're just not doing it.
Well, that is exactly about unmet needs. We can't be disciplining ourselves when we are emotionally hungry. So you can't actually tell somebody who's in a lot of distress and trauma, don't do your comfort things like watch Netflix or eat a bagel. You've got to go right to the heart of how do we attend to these unmet emotional needs so that the body and the soul is calm enough to make sacrifices. No one can sacrifice when they're already in deprivation. That's just too hard. It won't last. So you have to get right at what's emotionally hurting. What's the emotional need? How can we get it met directly instead of through these coping mechanisms of food and distraction? And that's a big order because there's not a lot of encouragement and permission for people to feel their feelings, especially around things as challenging as fertility. People want you to get on with it and get just right to the diet or the sleep. But there's just so much going on when you're scared, when you're sad, when you're frustrated. And I think people need a lot more space to be present to the grieving and the frustration and the hoping all along the way. So we have to do a very major reset for all women and men that are desiring a baby, that they're whole and complete right now with a desire, but the desire isn't an indication that something is wrong or missing.
Yeah, to really, because I think sometimes people, there's heartbreak on this journey, but sometimes may underestimate the actual impact this has on every aspect of your life. And then, and you're beating yourself up, where you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm trying to make these changes. Well, maybe because you're just in this really dark spot. So to being able to I'm saying to, go gluten-free and look at your sleep when it's too much, it's digging into that self-care piece and taking a step back so you can take a couple steps forward.
Yeah, I think an emotional cleansing is most important to getting through a stressful time. So whether it's a therapist or a friend, I would highly recommend this practice. Every week, you do a 20-minute trade with a friend where you unload for 20 minutes and they just listen and no comments and no fixing. Women just need to be heard. And when you're going through something as challenging as fertility, you are building up a residue of toxic emotions every week that you have or other people have around you, or these triggers that you mentioned, Sarah, and just a 20-minute emotional cleanse, and you know you'll have it every Thursday at 10, can really help unload the difficult emotions so that you can focus on self-care. The biggest, most important part of becoming a mother is mothering oneself. And you know this as a mom, and I do. When we are hurting, we need to be held and heard. So why is a woman trying to get pregnant any different?
I love that. And really having someone just listen without fixing.
No fixing. There's no fixing.
Yeah. And so what can our birth chart tell us about our communication style? And how can that give us some clarity around on how we receive information and communicate information?
Yeah. Well, there's a planet archetype in your chart called Mercury. And Mercury is how you think and communicate. And it's a very important part of your soul's map. And once you know your Mercury, you can really understand how you communicate and how you like to hear things. And then, of course, the people in your life, if you use my book and you know their Mercury, you can get a sense of, why we understand each other or don't understand each other and make modifications. So, for example, Sarah, what's your Mercury in?
Mine's Virgo.
Great. So Mercury in Virgo is a communicator that likes to drill down into the details, likes to be thorough and analytical, sometimes can be too picky or judgmental on self or others, and sometimes can get lost in the details instead of seeing the big picture. But Mercury in Virgo likes to actually have the facts and the information and be quite perfectionistic about what they're speaking about and how they're speaking. So it's a great, Mercury in Virgo is actually a really good placement. But depending on what your partner has or what your kids have, people like that or don't like that. I happen to really like it. My Mercury's in Capricorn, which is also an earth sign. So I like to talk about things factually and succinctly and get down to the root of it.
That's interesting. Probably when I prepare for these podcasts, I do a lot of research and really work on the questions. I know I've been on a number of other podcasts where people are like, this is just a casual conversation, just, show up. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I just would do it differently.
And I appreciate your style because I'm on a lot of podcasts and I was on a radio show and the woman said, yeah, we'll just talk for 2 hours. And, it was fine and I liked it okay. And I also felt like it could have had a lot more substance and depth because it wasn't prepared. And you're a big preparer, which I personally appreciate.
And can you talk a little bit about this Mercury in retrograde? Everyone goes bananas when that happens. Like what is that?
Well, it's when the planet Mercury actually stops going in direct motion and seems to stay still in the sky and appears to be going backwards, and it goes back some and then goes forward. And it happens a number of times in the year. We're in it right now, which is this date, February 20, what are we, 8? 9? I don't know. It is a time where lots of communications seem to go awry. My own experience is it just takes a lot more reflection and contemplation. In the natural order of things, we actually need to have a lot more time to reconsider things and to be more methodical and thoughtful. And Mercury retrograde is the perfect time to read more, to be quiet more, to go over things more thoroughly. And so if we don't take that time, we often find that computers break, messages get mixed up. I mean, it can happen anyway, but all of it is so that we become more conscious about communication.
Yeah, and I think, and if we relate it to this journey with communication, especially between couples,
yes.
they're handling infertility or the fertility journey differently. And so there could be some miscommunication there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, anytime you're under stress as a couple, you can have communication ruptures. That's so likely because you're both upset and stressed, so you're not your most skillful. Under Mercury retrograde, you could have a lot more confusion on the message. And so always with couples, again, a practice is you say something and I say what I heard you say is before I respond. Because what really doesn't work is he said, she said, or she said, or whatever the couple is. And that kind of debate is not a helpful conversational style for a couple. We're not actually adversaries. We're allies. So allies have as their primary concern understanding one another. So the first thing you want to do when you're not understanding one another is slow it way down and begin to ask the important questions. Did I get this right, Sarah? Did you say this? And then wait and see if you, Sarah, say, yes, that is exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, and I coach couples, and it's a continual, it comes up all the time, this. And typically, if you want to say generalizing, it is the man that may not, like the woman's talking a lot, may be looking at the phone, not listening, not validating, so she keeps going and going and going, and then never feels heard.
Yeah, that's a bad pattern. So rule number 1, ask for a certain amount of time to have an undistracted conversation. And I would say 30 minutes max, because most people that don't want to talk don't want to be hemmed in for any more than that. Mm-hmm. So let's have a 30-minute every night at dinner, before dinner, whatever. And the rules are undistracted, no phones, no papers, just you and I. That in itself is a radical move these days. Yeah. And then the second rule is, and there is no problem to solve. There's just understanding each other. That's such a gift to each person, because the men that don't want to listen also feel very misunderstood. And so that's why I like to have a timer. You talk, I listen. I talk, you listen. And then you could have a mutual conversation.
Everyone just wants to be heard.
That's all we all want. My friend Jennifer Buffett has a great quote. Every single person wants to feel safe, seen, and celebrated.
Absolutely. And so we talked a little bit about some triggers on the journey. And so how would knowing our communication style as it goes for astrology, how would that help us?
With what now?
So triggering words on the journey. So Pluto, which is jealousy, and am I getting this right? With jealousy and impulses for hatred?
Well, Pluto is a outer planet, and it doesn't really have to do with communication style. Okay. Unless it's linked with your Mercury, which is your communication style. And all of us have dark and difficult emotions, jealousy, hatred, envy, etc. And definitely when you're going through fertility treatments and your body's filled with often hormones or stress, you can have a lot of negative emotions. And knowing your communication style through Mercury can help you realize how to talk about those emotions, how to talk about those negative states. But first and foremost, we all need to give a wide berth, a lot of permission to having a lot of negative feelings when we're going through a difficult time.
And what about channeling that energy? Maybe that's more what I was trying to get to.
Okay, well, for me, I am a writer and a speaker, but for sure, the best way to channel negative emotions is write them out and don't censor, and then don't look back, rip them up. You need to purge yourself of all those negative thoughts and emotions, no matter who you are. And it doesn't help to keep thinking about them and recycling them. Think of them as garbage, write them up, throw them out.
Yeah, some people actually say to burn them too.
Sure, burning works great.
Yeah, or do that data dump in the morning where you just do a free writing for 20 minutes. What's that? The artist way.
Yeah, that really works. Absolutely.
Is there anything you'd like to say about Pluto as it relates to?
You really want to talk about Pluto?
I don't know why.
Why? Tell me, Sarah.
I had this.
What makes you want to talk about Pluto?
I had in here was talking about the jealousy and the impulses towards hatred. I don't know why I had that in there. And
well, tell me why that's important to you right now.
I think because a lot of times on this journey there's a lot of envy and jealousy and feeling stuck, and and it's so good over there, and
yes, excellent. That was a great illustration of you being vulnerable about jealousy and rage and envy. Yeah, one of the things that we do socially is we banish those ugly feelings as inferior. Like, let's talk about Pluto. Pluto is the part of our chart that rules all those dark, forbidden emotions, lust, jealousy, envy, hatred. And nothing would bring up those feelings more than truly wanting something more than anything you've wanted in your life and seen other people blithely have it.
Mm.
Of course you would be hateful and envious and jealous. And it's okay. Like what I want to say about Pluto, it's part of everyone's chart. So when that's activated, it's a very dark and difficult experience. And it's one that needs to be shared and make maybe some humor about. For example, I like with my friends and partner to make fun of my jealousy and envy as a way to give it room and lighten up. So for example, let's say a woman my age just looks fantastic and she hasn't done any face work and she's just unbelievably fit and everything looks great on her. I hate her. And so I get to say to my partner friends, you know, this is what's coming up for me. I just hate her. I just resent her. How dare she have such an easy time with this and that and that, but with humor, not like with vengeance dripping from my lips. Because we don't like having these emotions. They're not pleasant. Mm. So one, they need to be expressed, but two, they don't need to be taken that seriously because they're like passing monsters. They're like having monsters as guests.
Yeah, I think on this journey, the fertility journey, there's a lot of people get very triggered if a celebrity, you know, has a baby and they don't, even if the person, like if someone's all of a sudden announcing their pregnancy, like there's a lot of social media and comparison and, you know, and it's a very, very, can be very dark energy.
Yeah, very dark energy. And it's difficult to manage. And we need a community. We need support because it's all designed to make us feel inadequate. The entire consumer industry is based on people feeling bad about themselves, so they need to buy things. That's just how it's actually designed. That is the way we all respond, is what's wrong with me. And it brings up a lot of negative experiences. And
so my Pluto is Virgo. Anything to say about that?
Yeah. What do you want to say? Your Pluto is?
Virgo.
So then that would go with your Mercury. So you see, you are somebody that Pluto and Mercury together means you're a deep investigator and detective, but you can also be possessed by deeply dark thoughts and emotions. You need a great outlet for that. Another great outlet for a Pluto and Virgo with Mercury and Virgo is writing scathing criticism and having a pseudonym. So some of the best critics that are known for it have Pluto, Mercury, like you do, and they have an outlet for all that kind of judging and criticizing, so it doesn't go on them. Because for you, if you don't get to get it out of you, it's going to go back at you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, right? You're learning a lot about yourself through moving your planets wisely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so then during a struggle, we can shut out joy and pleasure and intimacy. Intimacy can become all about baby making. As far as impacting joy and really shutting that out, how do we let it in? And what would our birth chart tell us about that?
Well, I think, again, joy is only accessible to the degree we let all our feelings in and out. It's like a beautiful channel that if you only let certain things in, it gets smaller and smaller. So you have to think of yourself as this divine vessel. All feelings are coming and going. So don't block anything. And then joy comes, honestly, from full self-expression. So I am a very joyful person, and I don't block any thoughts or feelings. I find a way to let them out through some form of communication or creativity. Full self-expression is the hallmark of joy. Lots of times we think of joy falsely as something that we should have or should come to us, but it's actually generated by us.
Mm-hmm. I like that of the in and out, because sometimes we've held on to things for so long we don't even know if we didn't even let them out.
Exactly. And that's why that emotional cleanse every week of talking to somebody, a friend, 20 minutes each way, just listening, those things don't tend to get stored and rusty inside of us.
And what about Venus in this?
Venus is so important. I'm glad you brought her up. Okay. Let's see. With Venus, that is how we express our feminine. And that's whether you're a man or a woman. So Venus is our relationship style and our values. And it's so good to know what kind of Venus we have. And you're going to tell me yours, and I'll tell you mine. Because then it talks about what energizes our feminine potential, our attraction, our charisma. So
Libra.
What's yours? Libra.
Yes.
So for you, Venus is what's called ruling Libra, which is beautiful. And it means what energizes your magnetism and charisma is balance, order, beauty, and fairness. So when things are in harmony and in beauty, you yourself are just a representation of the divine feminine.
That is true. Yeah, I do like some order.
Yeah. And now my Venus is in Aquarius. And so what really energizes and charges me is to be around innovation, rebellion, unconventional things. I'm unconventional. I always have been. And I like to be around change agent type people. And then I feel very feminine and very held. People are very different. And to know your Venus is to know what charges you, what excites your feminine potential.
Yeah, and I think with the feminine and the masculine, you just do a little overview for that with people. I think people get
confused.
We're so, I think in this fertility journey, we're so in the masculine of pushing and striving. And it's typically, I coach a lot of type A, and everything they've wanted, they've got and achieved. And now here we're saying, let's surrender and let go and open up. And you're like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah. So real simply, the divine feminine is represented by the more yin qualities of receiving, of caring, of openness, of tenderness, of vulnerability, of holding, of embracing, of nurturing. The divine feminine, masculine, whether in men or women, because we have both. The divine masculine is about protecting, providing, structuring, and manifesting. So it's not about gender. It's actually qualities within all genders.
Mm-hmm. I love that. My next question is I want to dig into our intuition. So this is something that we all have, but I think, society, as we age or whatever has happened to us, we might have second guessed our intuition or just stomped it down. So we can't even listen to what is going on. We don't see the signs. And so as far as our intuition or psychic ability, how do we fine tune that?
Well, that's a great question. We are all highly intuitive, but we've been taught to shut that down. So the most important thing by far is you need to be in nature to get in touch with your true nature. You can't do intuition by being on machines or by being constantly busy. That's the enemy of intuition. Intuition requires a quiet stillness. So whether it's meditating or being in nature or drawing, something that's very contemplative, and then it's a practice. So you do a lot of deep breathing and ask for the divine guidance of the divine of your own knowing, however you define it, and everyone gets to define that. And then you just start testing your intuition and building it. So I do things like how many people will call me today, or who will I run into today? I just start playing games. It's a very lighthearted thing. It's not a heavy thing. And then as you build that muscle, it comes easier and more naturally.
Yeah, and you start looking for the synchronicities, and lo and behold, it just shows up everywhere.
Exactly.
What about Neptune in this situation?
Neptune rules our mystical nature and our part of ourselves that's able to dissolve into the oneness of everyone. So that's what Neptune's about, but it's an outer planet, so it's generational.
So mine's Scorpio.
Yes, well, that's generational. So everybody within 15 years of your birth date has that.
Okay.
So your generation is all about investigating otherworldliness, understanding, what it means to go into these deep, dark places and transform them. And so that's a very important placement, especially these days when there's so many shadows to be facing in ourselves and others.
And then, so we talked a little bit before about making some of the physical shifts, but making, looking at some of these mental shifts that we're talking about can potentially feel overwhelming depending on where we are. How do we use the planets to know we're on the right path?
Wow. Well, we can't really use the planets to know we're on the right path. That isn't what they're for. I think that what we can do is align ourselves with our divine knowing. And make the time and space to get in touch with that. Planets don't tell you whether you're on the right path. You know, you're the expert at you. And the way I know I'm on the right path is I wake up with energy and gratitude and purpose, and I'm in a generous place. I know I'm off the path when I'm self-consumed, have no interest in life, no use to anyone else, and I'm just in a very under-functioning place. To get into right relationship with your path is, one, if you're having a really profoundly emotional, difficult time, get support. Because to be drowning in negative emotions, we know we're not on our path. But it doesn't mean that grieving isn't a natural part of the path. It's just we need support to keep it moving. The planets don't tell us that. They are the roadmap of how to fulfill on all our gifts. But it's absolutely up to us to be a divine vessel so that we can share our gifts. And to be a divine vessel means you have to clear out the junk and be ready and prepared to serve.
To do the work, yeah. And what about Uranus in that as far as change?
Uranus rules change and sudden change, and it changes signs every 7 years. And so Uranus in your chart will show you the potential for you to be radically awakened and to be a change agent. So you can look at your chart and what sign it's in to see how you best use your energies of change. What sign is it in for you?
It's Libra. Did I pronounce that wrong then?
Uranus.
Uranus. Okay, I always thought it was Uranus. No?
Well, you can say it like that.
Okay.
Anyway,
okay. No,
Uranus in Libra is all about being a change agent for balancing relationships. So you're doing a good job of that.
Awesome. And is there anything you'd like to, obviously we're recommending your book, everyone to pick your book up there using your planets wisely, but is there anything else you would recommend as far as a book, a website, an app, a documentary, anything that you're just kind of obsessed with right now?
I love all things by Brené Brown because I think she's really tapping into what's been avoided, which is shame. And there's so much shame around motherhood. My God, whether you have a baby or don't have a baby, mothers are always shamed. And I really like, if you want to dig deep into astrology, my mentor's book, Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. I'm very fond of the Goop podcast. I think it's outstanding.
Yes.
And I think Sounds True podcast is outstanding.
Oh, Sounds True. Okay, I haven't heard that one.
And I really believe, more than anything for you and all your listeners, the road to happiness is to really embrace the journey and know that nothing that happens is going to make you better or worse than you are. It's holding our desires lightly, fervently, but knowing we're whole and complete right now and letting everyone know around us what we need to support our magnificence exactly how we are, instead of thinking we're problems to be solved.
That's beautifully said.
So I want people to go to jenniferfreed.com if they're interested in my work. I have clubs at this point they can join. I'm not doing any private readings because I got just hundreds and hundreds of requests, but I am putting people on a waiting list. But I have numerous ways for people to stay in touch with me on my website at jenniferfreed.com. So I hope your listeners will visit me there.
Awesome. Yeah. And they can also get a free chapter of the book there, all about the sun sign for free. So definitely go to jenniferfreed.com. And thanks so much, Jennifer, for coming on the podcast, really sharing your words of wisdom on this topic. This is, you can really go, I'm glad we were able to go deep, shed some light on this for people. And thank you so much.
Yes. And thank you for having such good questions and preparing and doing such a great service for the community. Truly.
Awesome. Melatonin is important for female fertility. It helps regulate hormones and maintain the body's circadian rhythms. Plus, it helps determine the frequency and duration of the menstrual cycle. Plus, it impacts sperm count and motility. Blue and green light negatively impact our melatonin production. That's why we recommend Blue Blocks, blue and green light sleep glasses to all our one-to-one clients. Simply go to Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout to receive your 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast. Hey there, I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call is for action takers, really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, FABfertile.com, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's FabFertile, FABfertile.com, and click on Book a Free Call. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.